Hello Bond fans and welcome to the Bond Bulletin. Stephen Knight is writing the script for Bond 26 and his intense development process points at a radical reinvention of 007. Industry leaks have already confirmed that Knight has spent months talking to active SAS operators and other members of what he calls more secret outfits to bridge the gap between classic Hollywood fiction and real-life espionage. By looking at real-world military history, Stephen Knight could fundamentally change how 007 looks, acts, and survives, especially after Daniel Craig's Bond was literally blown up at the end of No Time to Die. To bring Bond back from the dead, Amazon MGM Studios could wipe the slate completely clean. So, based on Knight's recent research, here are my 3 distinct theories on how his script could look like, and how it could change the franchise forever. But before we go into the first theory, we have to look at the terrifying real-world unit that is guiding Knight's pen in the writing process. For decades, MI5 and MI6 have tried to distance themselves from James Bond, telling the press, real spies don't carry weapons, they don't blow up buildings, and they are absolutely nothing like 007. And they're right. Civilian intelligence officers don't do the actual shooting. But there is one unit in the British government where the James Bond myth is a daily reality. SAS legend Andy McNabb served with a hyper-secret unit from 1991 to 1993, back when it was quietly referred to by MI6 handlers as the Increment. McNabb openly admitted that what this unit does is the closest thing to a real-life James Bond anywhere in the British Secret Service. It is a unit so classified that even after many decades, the details remain strictly locked away. And this brings me directly to my first major theory. To understand where Stephen Knight will be taking the story of Bond 26, we have to look at the history of the unit Andy McNabb served in. Long before the public knew it as E Squadron, and before MI6 called it the Increment, it was founded under a much darker name, the Revolutionary Warfare Wing, or RWW. The RWW was created for one specific purpose: deniable operations. Under British law, MI6 cannot legally pull triggers on foreign soil. So, when a mission requires targeted sabotage, an assassination, or extracting an asset out of a war zone under a fake passport, MI6 legally borrows the deadliest operators from the SAS. If they get caught, the British government completely disavows them. They vanish. Their supposed training facility? Fort Monkton in Hampshire. First light, anyone? This is theory number 1. Stephen Knight is writing a gritty, pitch-black origin story that mirrors the RWW. We know from recent interviews that Knight is also taking inspiration from the early original Ian Fleming novels. While the films turned Bond into a glossy superhero, Ian Fleming wrote him as a deeply damaged, cold-blooded commando. Bond spent the Second World War performing dangerous covert intelligence work behind enemy lines. By the end of the war, he had risen to the rank of commander within the Royal Naval Volunteer Reserve, a title he proudly carried into his peacetime spying career. Bond's operational training and the direct inspiration for his character came straight from a real-world elite unit that Ian Fleming himself created and commanded from a desk, Number 30 Commando. If Knight follows the Revolutionary Warfare Wing blueprint, Bond 26 could start with a young, rough-around-the-edges SAS sergeant being recruited out of his regiment, stripped of his real identity and handed a nameless, deniable passport. It's the perfect narrative bridge to explain how a new Bond exists after the last one died. James Bond isn't just a man, it's the permanent cover identity handed to whoever takes over the slot in this classified unit. My second theory comes down to the actual tactics Andy McNabb and fellow whistleblowers like former MI6 officer Richard Tomlinson have exposed about how E Squadron operates. And it spells disaster for a much-loved element of the film franchise, Q Branch. On the silver screen, Bond relies heavily on exploding pens, laser watches, and the occasional sports car packed with machine guns and missiles. But in the world of E Squadron, carrying a highly modified, weaponized gadget is certainly a death sentence. If you are stopped at a foreign border checkpoint with a laser built into your watch, your cover is blown instantly. According to insider accounts, operators in E Squadron are instead trained in what's called improvised sabotage. They are taught to enter a hostile environment with absolutely nothing, look at an everyday room, standard electronics or household chemicals, and weaponize them on the fly. If Stephen Knight incorporates this real-world protocol, it gives director Denis Villeneuve the exact canvas he thrives on. Think of Villeneuve's work in Sicario. Raw, tense, and hyper-realistic. We could see a version of Bond who doesn't get a briefing from Q about a bunch of spy toys. Instead, we could get a hyper-resourceful, terrifyingly clever 007 who has to rely entirely on his wits and environment to survive. The action shifts from CGI explosions to brutal and desperate close-quarters tradecraft. The third theory directly connects Knight's script to the massive casting search currently underway, and one user hinted at the Grey Man in my comment section, thank you very much for that by the way, and it prompted me to look at that more closely. In his over 60 years on screen, James Bond has walked into countless crowded rooms all across the world, sometimes announced his name to the villain, and has always worn bespoke expensive suits. He is literally the most famous spy in the world. But real-world special ops units like E Squadron live and die by the Grey Man theory. The absolute goal of an operative is to be completely, utterly unremarkable. You want to look like a local plumber, a low-level embassy clerk, or a generic tourist, maybe even a YouTuber like me filming a location special. If a single person remembers your face, your build, or your clothing after you leave, you have completely failed your mission. This perfectly aligns with what I discussed in my video about why casting director Nina Gold is actively avoiding A-list superstars like Henry Cavill or Tom Hardy. They aren't looking for a loud, airbrushed Hollywood male model. Stephen Knight's script demands a grey man, an actor who can blend seamlessly into a crowd, look completely invisible, and then instantly flip a psychological switch into a lethal machine when the doors close. Rumoured names filtering out of the London audition rooms fit this exact psychological profile. They have the raw, dangerous charisma of a young Sean Connery in 1962, who, let's not forget, was a complete unknown, former milkman and bodybuilder before he put on the tuxedo. When you look at the evidence, Stephen Knight isn't trying to ruin the legacy of Bond by ignoring the old films. He could be doing something more radical, restoring Ian Fleming's vision by filtering it through the terrifying reality of British Black Ops. So, after hearing my 3 theories, what are your thoughts? Are you ready for a gritty, gadget-free, real-world SAS-style Bond reboot? Or do you prefer the classic Hollywood fantasy? Let me know in the comments. I read through all of them and I love to engage in discussions with you. Otherwise, if you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe to see more Bond 26 analysis as we're hopefully gearing up towards something more substantial in the future. Until then, have a great day, Bond fans, and see you soon.